on behalf of U.S. Rep. Jasmine Crockett and self against House Bill 4. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Please give us your testimony.
So, first of all, it is a sham that we sit here and y'all pretend as if you care about what the people have to say, but we are going to make y'all listen as long as you will. This map does nothing but divide, distract, and depress. There is this idea that was put out there during his opening remarks that this does so much for black folk. Well, let me tell you, as a black person, it does not. Let me tell you that in this map, to be clear, y'all added two additional Anglo majority seats. Now, when we went through the 21 maps, you added 2 Anglo majority seats, and now you're adding 2 more Anglo majority seats, and then you've decided that you are going to pack and crack, and that is the language that I am going to use because that is the legal language. And I also just want to remind y'all really quickly that it does not look good when you take every economic engine out of my district and then tell me that I am supposed to sit here and be so happy because you added black folk from a whole other community. When you want to talk about monoliths and whether or not they exist, this idea that you just take people and move them around. I have 200,000 people who were never in my district, and my district is 766,000. Playing move minorities around so that you can somehow claim that this is nothing but partisanship. The only way that you get here is by making sure that you trample upon the rights and the liberties and the voices of minorities. So let me give you a few facts about the state of Texas. The state of Texas only has 39% Anglos, yet somehow under this map, we are going to have somewhere near 60-something, almost 70% of these seats are going to be chosen by Anglos. If we were looking for fairness and to follow the Voting Rights Act, you'd have 15 Latino opportunity seats, 15 Anglo seats. You then have 4 African-American opportunity seats. Then you'd have 2 Asian opportunity seats, and the other 2 seats would belong to coalitions because we are a majority-minority state where over 60% of this population is people of color. So if you want to do what's fair and right under the Voting Rights Act, as well as if you say that this Fifth Circuit Court case matters and somehow changes everything, my question to you is, when are y'all gonna do y'all's maps? Because you did your maps in 2021 and then the case came out and I haven't seen y'all talk about the fact that you're gonna redistrict the House and the Senate.
Thank you for your testimony. Chair calls Greg Casar. I'll show you registered testify as Greg Casar on behalf of yourself against House Bill 4. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Please give us your testimony.
I want to start with the elephant in the room. No lawmaker here, Republican or Democratic, is actually making decisions about Texas's maps. No one, in fact, in this state is making decisions about Texas's maps. The Republican members on this dais have outsourced our state's democracy to Mar-a-Lago and to the Oval Office. You're saying to Texas voters that you don't get to pick who represents you. Donald Trump gets to pick who represents you. I see this as a betrayal of the people in our state in service of a corrupt president who only cares about maintaining his own power. Here's the result. In this proposed map, 10 million Texans would get thrown out of their district into another district for no good reason. And 2/3 of those who are getting moved around are Texans of color. This proposal illegally suppresses the votes of Black and Hispanic and working class Americans. Just like George Wallace did, just like Bull Connor did, just like Governor Alan Shivers of Texas did, just like every other Jim Crow era villain that you and I read about in our history classes did. And I want to say a word about how this affects my home city of Austin, Texas. To wring as much power out of this as possible, Trump is demanding that we create districts that make no sense. The southern part of the Austin metro area gets gerrymandered into Port Aransas. Northern parts of the city get gerrymandered into Midland, Odessa. The drive between Midland, Odessa, and Port Aransas, which I know some of us have made, is 8 hours long. That is tearing apart my home's community in order to preserve billionaires' power. Please do not tear apart our home for the benefit of Donald Trump. It's the same old story over and over, corrupt politicians trying to change the rules to drown out the voices of working class people and communities of color. Donald Trump is the most corrupt president in American history.
Amen.
Ken Paxton, the most corrupt politician in Texas history.
Amen.
Do not be in on their scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chair will show Representative Guerra is now present. Good to have you with us, Bobby. Chair calls Sylvia Garcia. Shall you register to testify on behalf of yourself against House Bill 4? Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Please give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you'll recall I am from District 29, one of the targets that was listed in the Department of Justice letter. District 29 was created in 1990. It was made to be a majority Latino district and has remained a majority Latino district for 35 years. As a Congresswoman for CD 29, I have focused on the needs of the working families in Houston to ensure that they have a voice in Congress. I am the lead sponsor of the American Dream and Promise Act to provide citizenship for dreamers who are brought here to the United States as children, and I sponsored the Keeping Families Together Act, prohibiting eviction of mixed-status families in HUD housing, directly benefiting working Latino families. I have had a long public service career in Houston at all levels of government, including being a judge and being here in the legislature as a state senator. And since 1990, Houston Latinos have always had representation in Congress of their preferred candidate. But this bill, if passed in its current form, will no longer make that true. This is significant and material. Harris County would no longer have a Latino Opportunity District. In the current plan, CD 29 has a Hispanic citizen voting age percentage of 63.5%. HB4 lowers this by 20 points, down to 43%, less than 50. By lowering the CVAC, Latino candidates have a diminished chance of winning nomination in the primary elections. HB4 dismantles a protected Latino Opportunity District which has functioned to elect the Latino candidate of choice for 3 decades. As of the 2020 U.S. Census, Harris County Latino population was about 2,034,000 people. If this bill passes, there will no longer be a congressional district in Harris County that elects a candidate of choice for 2 million people. This is a shame. It's a disgrace. It violates federal law and potentially the United States and Texas constitutions. I urge you to stop this illegal redistricting and focus on the true needs of Texans. Texans know what to do. We don't need a con man from New York telling Texas what to do. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you for your testimony. Chair calls Chaplain Stoglin. Shall you register to testify on behalf of the Frederick Douglass Republicans of Tarrant County?
That is correct.
For House Bill 4, is that correct?
That is correct.
Please give us your testimony.
The renowned economist Dr. Thomas Sowell stated, when you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear. Thucydides, the Greek warrior commando general, who later became a classic writer and philosopher, wrote in the history of the Peloponnesian War, the society that separates its scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. While the founder of the Frederick Douglass Republicans of Tarrant County, the late Honorable Reby Carey, stated, especially to black and brown Americans, be an informed, intelligent voter. Make your vote count. Remember, freedom isn't free. Someone has to pay the price. Historically, Texas has elected 40 Democrats, 1 independent, 1 unionist, and 6 Republican governors. We must read and evaluate the prosperity of our great state under each party. On 4 through 6, 1867 in Houston, Texas, the Republican Party of Texas was created by 150 colored men and 20 white men. They did this in the name of justice then, and we are requesting redistricting in the name of justice now. I echo their clarion call to have Republican leadership in the great state of Texas. As a black American, Afghanistan veteran, a retired department head of the U.S. Department of Justice, I strongly support the Republican redistricting. I do not want, nor does the great state of Texas or this magnificent nation deserve to continue seeing systemic gang and street violence, a plummeting educational system, communities deteriorating, men and women's sports, etc., while Democrats sit quietly and fail to condemn or acknowledge the systemic moral decay, screaming systemic racism for anything that does not fit their narrative. These acts of evil must stop. We need Republican leadership for such a time as this. Republicans have a larger story. The late General Colin Powell stated, "None of us can change our yesterdays, but we all can change our tomorrows." We need and must have increased Republican leadership in the great state of Texas to remain great. As president of the Frederick Douglass Republicans of Tarrant County, I stand behind this statement. Thank you. Simplify.
Mr. Stoglin, I heard you said "I" a few times in your testimony. I had you registered only on behalf of the Frederick Douglass Republicans of Tarrant County. Do I have your permission to
Yes.
modify your registration to be
Yes.
also on behalf of yourself?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to do that right now. Thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions for the members of this panel? Chair calls Representative Mann. You have questions? Okay, Representative Turner. Recognize the question of the panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Questions for Congresswoman Crockett.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. You mentioned in your testimony that this proposal, House Bill 4, removes economic engines from Congressional District 30.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yes. So Dallas Love Airport has historically been in District 30 maybe since it was created, which was also in 1990. It is gone now. All of downtown Dallas, which has AT&T headquarters, Goldman Sachs is there, and a number of others, entirety of downtown has been removed as well. As well as right there, this isn't necessarily one of the economic engines, but right there at the airport is a historic freedmen's town. And so I do have a number of freedmen's towns in general that are in my district. They removed that one that is right there by the airport, and they also removed, no, that's the only one that they removed. From what I can tell, I've not had a great opportunity to review these maps. It's been slow. And then they also removed the medical center. And what is so heartbreaking specifically about them removing the medical center from this district is that one of the 3 ARPA-H facilities that was authorized under the previous administration, the state of Texas is the only Republican state to get one, and I got it to come to my district. We're talking about tons of jobs. We're talking about a lot of money overall for medical research, and they removed that as well. As of now, I am unclear as to what economic engines really do still exist within the current iteration of my district.
And you're right. I know that Love Field, downtown, those have historically been parts of Congressional District 30, dating back to Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson's early years in Congress. Yes. So it is shocking to see them removed. You mentioned how the map brings you further into Tarrant County.
Yes.
And so you would represent a big chunk of Arlington under this proposal. But I noted in looking at the boundaries of the map in Arlington, it takes Congressional District 30 right up to the edge of UT Arlington.
Right.
But doesn't include UT Arlington.
Correct.
And it takes you right up to the edge of the General Motors plant, but does not include the General Motors plant.
Right.
So and it certainly doesn't include the entertainment district.
No.
And so those are 3 economic engines in Arlington, which you would represent a much larger portion of, but they would not be in your district either.
That is absolutely right. And it's interesting that you bring up the Tarrant County aspect. I do want to be clear, because we are talking about the Voting Rights Act. When we're talking about the Voting Rights Act, we're talking specifically about Section 2. Section 2 is about race. So we will continue to mention race because that is the law. Section 2 and the Voting Rights Act overall was codified to basically further explain the 15th Amendment of the Constitution, which again was about race. So that's why we're talking about it. So when you look at Dallas County and the way that they have sliced it up, Dallas County is one of the most diverse counties in the entire state of Texas. But unfortunately, what they've done is they've taken those minority communities and they've separated them out. They've either divided them into random districts that have nothing to do with the things that they need. They're not communities of common interest, or they've packed them into districts. And now they're claiming, oh, we created a new something for you, so be happy. And it's not true. So when it comes to Tarrant County, unfortunately, Congressional District 33 was pretty much anchored in Tarrant County. All of those historic Black areas, Stop 6 and others, they now are supposedly going to be represented by somebody who's probably never, ever going to walk those streets. I just want to be honest about that. And so the Tarrant County portion, in my opinion, it is being failed right now because what it should be is it should be either majority in Tarrant County or linked with other people in Tarrant County that are more communities of interest, or there should just be a wholly contained Tarrant County district, and they could absolutely do that, and they're choosing not to.
Absolutely. And in my view of the Tarrant County portion of the map is that, tell me if you agree with this, the minority voting strength in Tarrant County is greatly diminished through classic cracking in the case of CD 33 and packing in the case of CD 30.
Absolutely.
Fair to say?
That's absolutely. They used CD 30 to pack it up with minorities that they felt like maybe wouldn't go along with the white supremacist agenda, but yes.
And the previous comment, I think, from the bill author, maybe in response
Been a question. I mean that's not even been the position of the state. I am engaged in litigation from the 2021 maps where they used CD30 in a similar way. And actually at the time that the 2021 maps, well, as we were working on the maps and the numbers came out, CD30 had a naturally occurring population of 52% citizen voting age population being African American. This legislature in 21 decided to pull it down from being over 50%. And they were allowed to do so because federal law says that it's more so about will this still perform as an African American opportunity seat. So they did not do me a favor and somehow create an African American opportunity seat. And their position in this current litigation that has not been resolved has been that CD30 is protected under the Voting Rights Act as an African American opportunity seat.
Absolutely. And back to last question, back to economic engines briefly. Federal courts have historically looked at redistricting plans, and when legislatures have removed key economic engines from minority districts and districts represented by minority members of Congress or minority legislators, is it fair to say they have taken a dim view of legislatures doing that?
They have absolutely taken a dim view, which is one of the reasons that I brought that up. In addition to the fact that I know that this legislature did ask us as members of Congress to confirm our addresses. I don't know how many of us actually still reside in the districts that we represent. I do not currently reside in my district based upon the plan that has been drawn, which is another red flag, in addition to courts consistently looking at how many people have been moved. And when we do the math, our districts are approximately 766,000 people. All of a sudden, randomly moving approximately 200,000 people out and another 200,000 people in, because Tarrant County, I only had about 50,000 people in the current iteration. Now I'm going to have 250,000 people from Tarrant County.
Right. That's information I didn't know. So the legislature, as Texas Legislative Council, asked you recently for your home address? Prior
to the testimony actually beginning, the public testimony that took place, they asked us to certify that our addresses were still correct, as well as the census tract. And we confirmed that, and we emailed back, and I got confirmation that they received it. Yet I know I was removed from my district. I know Mark Vesey was removed from his district. I know Julie Johnson's not in her district, and I can't. Joaquin is not in his. So listen, they took all of us out. They basically left the numbers somewhere else and removed us, is all I know, which is yet another thing that the courts will look at. I will be clear that I have every intention of going to court as soon as possible to get an emergency action done, because I do feel as if there is a violation right now, if this map passes, of the Voting Rights Act for so many reasons.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Mr. Chairman, can I ask the chairman and the bill author if the committee or legislative council requested to verify home address information from members of Congress and that information was received, why was that information disregarded and members of Congress, particularly minority members of Congress representing majority minority districts, were seemingly intentionally drawn out of their districts?
Chair's not advised or aware of that, so we'll understood and we'll look into it.
Would the bill author be able to address that?
Bill author's not currently at this time. I mean, you can ask him at close. Yeah, but I don't know.
I'd be curious
because
if
it's legislative council. I don't know what legislative council receives or not.
I'd be curious to know if the law firm Butler Snow that ostensibly drew the map had that information, and did they just choose to disregard it?
Understood. Let's see. Going back, Mr. Stogler, real quick before we go to our next question. Whenever we change you to register on behalf of yourself as well, we need to list your occupation. Would you mind telling me your occupation that we could list on your registration?
I'm retired.
Retired. Okay.
Yes.
And we have your permission to put that on your registration?
Yes, that's
All right,
fine.
all right, we've done
Earned.
so. Thank you very much. Next questioner, we had Representative Spiller as recognized question panel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a few questions for Congresswoman Crockett, if you don't mind. Thank you for being here today. You've referenced in your testimony a few things about the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 in particular. You talked about the Petaway case, talked about coalition districts, the subject of the Petaway case, and you sound like you're pretty involved in litigation relating to redistricting. Have you, you're an attorney, have you read the Petaway case?
I have not read the Petaway case, but I am familiar-ish with it.
Okay. You understand that, I mean, you don't dispute that it's the law currently in the state of Texas?
I won't dispute that the Fifth Circuit has entered the decision. I will dispute that the Supreme Court has affirmed that decision. And I also want to say that I was present while the bill author talked about his interpretation of Petaway, and I disagree with his interpretation. In fact, he basically said this means that we can tear apart coalition districts, and that's not what it said. The Petaway decision stands for the position that you don't necessarily have to create new districts that are coalition districts, but not that the current coalition districts should not enjoy the protections under the Voting Rights Act. And what we're seeing here is that you are intentionally destroying coalition districts because of a misinterpretation of a Fifth Circuit court opinion that, in my opinion, is also going to lead, because of the amount of minorities that we've talked about that have been moved around, because the Voting Rights Act itself stands for minorities having a voice, and we are in a majority minority state. I think that just like every single time Texas has gone to court, they have lost for being intentionally racially discriminatory. I believe that there will be no difference this time. You will be found to be intentionally racially discriminatory. I will tell you that this administration could care less. This administration just doesn't want to check, especially if it means people that are loud and proud like me have the ability to do a check on this administration for their last 2 years.
And that's your analysis of the opinion that you've not yet read?
Correct. I've not read the opinion, but
All right,
I've
well, if
definitely
you'll-
read summaries of it.
When you do read the opinion, which I would encourage you to do, if you'll look to page 17, it talks about one of the reasons that the court ruled the way that it did had to do with statutory construction. And it strictly construed Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and referenced the fact that Congress has been silent. Congress has not amended that or addressed that and addressed coalition districts under the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. So my question to you as a member of Congress, since the ruling in Petaway a year ago, have you filed any amendment to the Voting Rights Act that would allow you and allow the Voting Rights Act to be amended to provide for coalition districts?
Well, let me tell you something. As it relates to the Voting Rights Act, I have always signed on to and believe that we should pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would replace the entirety of the Voting Rights Act, as well as the Freedom to Vote Act, which would actually make sure that we could get some of this money out that allowed a presidency to be bought. So to be clear, when we left the last time when I was serving in the State House, we left because we wanted Congress to pass those two bills then. And since I've been a member of Congress, I have signed on. So do I have a fix? Absolutely. We need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, Advancement Act. And you know who doesn't want to sign on?
And-
People from your party.
Right.
So, I mean, I can't do nothing in the minority, but if I could wave a magic wand, or if you'd like to call some of my Republican colleagues on the federal level and tell them that they should do right like historically Republicans have, because it has always been bipartisan to reauthorize the Voting Rights Act. And we know that a Republican governor from the state of Texas, it was a Bush that reauthorized it last time. And when I say bipartisan, I'm not talking about one or two. I'm talking about passing with like 99 people. So listen, we are ready. We just need people that believe in fairness and freedom in this country to sign up and agree with us, and we will get this done. We will fix all the problems.
And I think my question is after the Petaway ruling a year ago, have you, since that time, filed any legislation to amend Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act to address the coalition district concerns that you raise? And I think that your answer is no.
The answer is that I have signed on to the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would resolve all of these issues.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Barbara Gordon Hawkins to question the panel. Is that right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congresswoman Crockett, you know, you've been in these chairs, and now you're on the other side. In speaking to our colleagues and trying to solicit their support to do the right thing, what would you recommend to our colleagues?
Listen, it is so frustrating to be here, and regardless of differences, you know, in fact, going to D.C. was such an adjustment for me, because when we do everything in D.C., it's left or right. That's how we enter rooms. That's how we sit. Everything is left or right. Even when we're on the floor, that's how we vote. But in the Texas House, your desk mate may be a Republican. In the Texas House, regardless of our differences, guess what? So long as your key was in your desk, one of your Republican colleagues may vote your desk and will vote it the right way. They know you were going to be the opposite of them, and they would vote it the right way. So it was weird for everything to be so separated, because even though we obviously were not in the majority when I was here, there still was this kind of Texas pride that we always walked with. And it was always that, listen, we are Texas, we are not D.C. And right now, y'all are being DC'd. And that is wild to me, because we always talked about how we were Texas and that we didn't do the D.C. stuff. And so now to get caught up in this and do harm to the constituents that trust us. You talk about the hearings that took place. There were Republicans that said at the end of the day, I may not agree with the Democrats, but I agree with fairness. So I am here to testify against this process because it's not fair. I'm just asking for the Texas legislature to do what the Texas legislature has always done, which is to be Texas and not be D.C.
Thank you.
Representative Pearson, you recognize the question of the panel.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is for Congresswoman Crockett. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts on the map. I hear you, I understand. But you did mention something in your testimony that I think is worth drawing out a little bit on. You mentioned previously the two Anglo seats from before.
Yes.
Who are currently in those seats?
One of them is Lloyd Doggett, and the other one is Wesley Hunt.
And does that mean one is a Democrat seat and one is a Republican seat?
Correct.
Okay. So the Democrat seat elected a white man.
Yes.
And the Republican seat elected a black man.
Yes.
Okay. And then so today you're concerned about the new Anglo seats, and the assumption that you're making is that it's going to lead to more Anglo representation.
It is.
Okay.
Because so to be clear, because I may have not been clear, these seats are not about who gets elected. They're about who gets to choose who is elected. And so my district, while it is an African American opportunity seat, it is an opportunity for African Americans to choose their representation. But they don't have to elect a black person. We have a similar seat in Memphis, Tennessee, that historically was always represented by the Ford family. Harold Ford Sr. and Harold Ford Jr. had it, but now it is a white man that is representing that black seat. So it's not about the faces of the seats. It's about who gets to choose who's in the seat. And that doesn't mean that they're going to choose their own race. As you see, 2 Anglo majority seats, one went for a white candidate, one went for a black candidate. It's not about us as candidates. It's about the people that get to do the choosing.
Well, I would argue that based on the testimony that we've heard over the last week or so, it's both. We're hearing racism all over the place. We're hearing, people want to choose people who look like them, which apparently has been happening. And I just wanted to make it clear that, something that has not been said yet is that there are minority Republicans. I mean, there is a black and Hispanic Republican on the dais. And so I just don't think it's fair to just assume that the Anglo districts are going to lead to more Anglo representation.
But
those were your words, so I'm just
I apologize if that is how it was interpreted, but my clarification is that when we're talking about the law and the Voting Rights Act, it's never been based upon who it is that gets elected. It's based upon who it is that gets to choose who is elected. And unfortunately, adding 2 more Anglo seats in a state that added, if we're going on the census that came out in 2021, there were only 180,000 new Anglos to this state. So the idea that we would take the bodies of Black, Brown, and Asian, 95% of what allowed this state to garner 2 new seats, and basically use their bodies for the benefit of making sure that a shrinking majority continue to hold on to power is wild. Because when we look at the numbers, this is just to clarify. In the last 3 censuses, in 2000, Anglos were 52.43% of the state of Texas. In 2010, Anglos were 45.33% of the state of Texas. In 2020, Anglos ended up being found to be 39.75%. At the same time that Anglo percentages were going down, somehow their seats and their ability to elect more representation to DC goes up at the same time that Latinos back in 2000, 31.99% of the state. Then it went to 37.62 in 2010, and then it went to 39.26 in 2020. Yet somehow they still don't have the ability to elect representatives of their choice, whoever they elect. It may be, we can talk about Lloyd Doggett. Lloyd Doggett, for the longest, was representing a seat that was a Latino opportunity seat. They chose Lloyd Doggett. That's fine. We just want people of color to be able to choose their representation so that we can comply with the Voting Rights Act as well as the 15th Amendment of the Constitution. That is it. And who they decide to elect is who they decide to elect. And in addition to this state being in trouble in previous court litigation, they have found that when this state legislature has said, we'll add these minorities over here. Well, again, when you start shifting people around, they found historically, I want to say it was around the 2010 redistricting, that what Texas did is they decided to add basically low propensity Latinos in one of the districts. So that, again, that district would not be Latinos being able to elect their representation because they took people that they knew had a low propensity to show up.
And so on that note, with these new lines, political performance was taken in consideration.
That is what we've heard from the bill author, yes.
And in previous hearings, I mentioned specifically that in the state of Texas, President Trump did win a majority of the Hispanic voters in the state. And just to broaden that even further, those are the numbers. President Trump did win the majority of the Hispanic votes in the state. In fact, he flipped, I believe it was 10 counties in the state. So don't you think that is reflective of this map, this proposed map, that the minorities who are here with the new minority districts that have been created, it is reflective?
No, Representative, I don't. Again,
Okay.
it's just based upon, this is just pure math. Like, I'm not trying to pick who is going to vote for who, because as it was stated earlier, the idea that anybody is a monolith is wild anyway.
Right.
Because first of all, Latinos down at the border, they are not the same as Latinos, say, in the DFW or in Harris County. So I don't want to pretend as if any minority group is a monolith, which is one of the reasons that we talk about communities of common interest, because we work together and we function together and we do things a little differently. I'm sure there are even black folk in Houston that will argue that they're not the same as Dallas black people, right? So it's an ongoing thing. But nevertheless, what I will say is that is why you shouldn't just be grabbing up people from wherever and saying, oh, well, they all the same race. It is bigger than that. It is trying to make sure, and you brought up compactness earlier. And so compactness is one of those things that you consider as well, because again, it is different. When you look at a state the size of Texas, you know how many states you can fit in our state, right? So thinking about it in that way, a reflective map would look like the fact that only 39% of this state is Anglo. So how in the heck do we have 60% of the seats that go to DC are going to be decided by Anglos? That's the math that doesn't work. We need to flip the numbers so that people of color, no matter who they vote for, if they decide they're voting for Trump, and you're right, because of the 13 democratically elected seats in the state of Texas, one of those seats was a majority white seat. That's it. Everybody else, it was people of color that sent us to DC. But when we look at the Republicans, of the 25 seats, 23 of those seats are Anglo majority seats. 2 of those seats, Latinos are the ones that chose. And I don't have a beef with that. That's who they elected, and that is perfectly fine. So they have 2 Anglo seats that are Republican. 2 Latino opportunity seats that elected Republicans. That is perfectly fine. People vote for who they vote for, but don't divide our communities and dilute our voices. And that's why we're here, because we feel like we're being diluted because we're packing black folk, the bill author mentioned that there's some district that went up to over 70-something% Latino. That is packing. You don't need almost 80% Latinos for that district to perform as a Latino opportunity seat.
And so you don't agree with the new minority Hispanic seats? Because that's
I
what
don't
just
agree
happened.
I don't agree with this map.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Mann, you'll recognize the question of the panel. As soon as we get the microphone going.
I don't know if it's okay. I'm going to try to be really quick because I don't want to belabor the point. I have a question really for all of you. Congresswoman Garcia. Congresswoman Crockett brought us something very interesting, and she was saying, we are different. Southeast Texas is different from West Texas, East Texas. One thing that we know historically is always done is to pit minorities against each other and make them to fight over scraps. Can you explain what is happening with these congressional districts in Harris County are forcing communities of interest to fight one another? And any example that you can tell me of how that has been historically used against our communities in a racist context to dilute the vote or to stop people voting, whatever that is?
Well, certainly there was an attempt to dilute the vote. When you hear the numbers again, that my Hispanic citizen voting age population went from 63.5 to 43. If 20% down isn't dilution, then what is dilution? And to argue that now there's the new 9, which diluted Congressman Green's district, went from 25.3 to 50.41. That's just a little bitty, tiny, as Gilda Radner used to say on Saturday Night Live. That's an itty, bitty bump above 50%. So frankly, give me a break. You diluted it, whatever you did, because you diluted the vote, split it up, and then you raised the African American. So yes, that kind of, by default, might put us in opposition. But it depends on who the candidate is. I've been blessed that I've run citywide. I've had support from the African American community, Asian community. You don't win in Houston citywide without that population. So I think it's unfortunate because they're using race to divide us. And for anyone to argue that this isn't about race, the letter itself picked on four minority districts. Is that just a coincidence? No. And then they went in and divided them the way they did. So I think it's just, as I said earlier, it's shameful. And I will hope that you all don't support the map and that we can or that we can change it in some way. Because it's never good when we put communities of interest against each other. Communities of interest should be about bringing people together, not dividing them.
Thank you. Congressman Casar, I know that you had also brought this up, and I am still beyond perplexed. And this is nothing against anybody in the city. This is nothing against anybody in Austin. But can you, for the love of God, explain to me what Travis County has in common with San Jacinto County, Polk County, Trinity, or Houston County? Because I'm going to tell you, I've never seen anything Austin like in any of those counties. And I go there to just eat dinner, and I'm back home, and I still got people like, we almost to Houston from Austin. So can you explain that? Because I don't understand how we're trying to make this map better, but Austin is obviously a target. Can you explain how these counties have anything in common with this part of Travis?
I mean, anybody who's not a politician should just look at these maps and thinks it's a joke. And to your point, it's clear to me that these maps aren't drawn by anybody from Texas. It is you all on the diocese's job to draw Texas's maps. It's clear that somebody in Mar-a-Lago drew these maps. The southern suburbs of Austin in Hayes County, that I currently proudly represent, they have drawn out to Port Aransas. There's northern parts of Austin drawn to northeast Texas, western parts of Austin drawn out to Midland, Odessa. The only reason you do that is because you currently have a president that accepted a $400 million gift from the Qatari government, the biggest bribe in presidential history. It just got put out that he's spending $200 million in taxpayer dollars for an addition to the White House so he can go hang out there and have his golden toilet there too, I guess. The only reason that you would have a map that looks this absurd is because you have an extremely unpopular president that knows nothing about Texas who's sending a map here. And at the end of the day, what it does very clearly is what the Voting Rights Act banned in 1965. It specifically moves 10 million Texans, 2/3 of whom are people of color, and tries to use them as the president's tool, when ultimately Texans of all races should be the ones picking their members of Congress. It's just that simple. You look at it, and it makes no sense to anybody in politics, and that's when you know that you could smell a rat. And so, look, at the end of the day, this is not about any of us as members of Congress. No politician owns these districts. No member of Congress owns these districts. No president can put their name in flashy lights to the top of these districts. These seats are owned by the people of Texas. And if the people of Texas saw these maps, they would hang their heads in shame.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Congresswoman Crockett, the one thing that I find just so asinine to me, and I hope that you can maybe help enlighten at least maybe me, why people think taking economic engines from black people or Hispanic people and saying, well, at least we put you together, that has done something historically to help us, because unless I am reading all the wrong history books and I'm just completely dunce, that's called redlining. And that has historically been used to disenfranchise our communities. It's been historically used to stop us as we're in the process of taking care of ourselves. And it's been something historically used to, once that community starts to become dumbed down for people, and I brought this up last time to say that we're lazy, we're ghetto, why can't they just do this? Why can't they behave this way? When you take every economic engine away from them, So maybe you can explain to me how is that going to affect that part of Texas that has historically dealt with some severe forms of racism that people whose families never lived through racism will never be able to tell you the experience of how bad it was for them, not what they saw on, the Lifetime movie that said, oh, it's okay, we still love you, and my family wasn't racist like that.
Yeah, no. You know what? One of the things I failed to mention is that this map is so terrible that the two new black seats that they telling us that they gave us, because they're like, be happy we gave you some scraps, because that's kind of how it sounded when they said it to me. The 18th and the 30th lost their airports. The 18th had IAH, and the 30th had Dallas Love Field. And not only did it have Dallas Love Field, Southwest Airlines is based at Dallas Love, which is right there, right? As well as JSX Airlines is based in my district right there at Dallas Love. As well as we also have two plane manufacturers, and we have one that does some finishing work. It's not the headquarters, but a lot of private jets. Gulfstream is based right there at Dallas Love Field. Now, let me tell you what a good representative does. I can't speak for anybody else, but one of the major parts of having these economic engines, and they are then tied to my district, is I make them not be able to ignore my district. So when I'm talking about, like, what are you going to do when you're hiring, and does that hiring look representative of our district? I promise you, when I walk in, they know who I am and they know about CD30. And so then they give me all the numbers and they ask, well, what can we do to do better? So for instance, when we had the FAA reauthorization, while I did not serve on the transportation committee, I was able to take information that I got from some companies, I won't name specific ones, that were lacking in diversity because they had a diverse member and they were a part of this district. And so I said, I want to help you. I don't want to hurt you. And so we were able to talk and get legislation into FAA reauthorization that would increase the diversity numbers when it came down to pilots, that would increase people's abilities to actually ascertain what is normally a $30,000 pilot's license, which then limits so many people of color from being able to enter the field. I am able to talk to them and tell them the things that they can do to make sure that they're hiring locally, and locally looks like within our district. When you have a break like that, this means that the economic opportunities for my constituents may go away because now they are not tied to my constituency, a constituency that unfortunately has 20% of my district live at or below poverty. To then take my economic engines away. What was fair for the state of Texas was, let's say there was an overrepresentation of black folk, right? Like black people were picking too many districts. And so they had to get rid of one of them. And it ended up being mine. I would say that's fairness. Like that's just what it is, right? But unfortunately, this map is not reflective of our state. And that's the only thing that I wanted to do, is be reflective of our state and make sure that you are keeping communities of common interest together and you're not depriving those districts that are already struggling of their economic engines, which has been done to both the 30th as well as the 18th.
And if I may mention someone as it relates to Latino districts, representative, because it's been brought up quite a bit, I currently represent a district that is a Latino opportunity district, upheld by the Supreme Court and its conservative justices in the last decade. And what I hope that this panel looks at closely is some of these districts that are supposedly new Hispanic opportunity districts, that since you'll be reviewing a map made in the White House and not here in Texas, that you check to make sure that they did not intentionally make sure that it was neighborhoods of Latinos that they saw that in the last few elections voted at a lower rate, so that it could ultimately be, in fact, not a Latino opportunity district, but a sham opportunity district. So the numbers show that under this proposed map, there are more Anglo opportunity districts. And the so-called new Latino opportunity districts, I would look at that very carefully, and I believe judges and lawyers and history may look at those quite unkindly, especially if you dismantle the actual Latino opportunity districts that Congresswoman Garcia and myself currently represent.
Let's see. Mr. Tepper, do you have questions for the panel?
Yes.
So recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Congressman Casar, this has been racially focused of late and even charged. I think you made some comments about Hispanic districts being broken up, et cetera. One of the issues I'm seeing as we go through this process is that Hispanics, and I mean, according to most of the exit polls we see, voted for President Trump, about 55% of the vote. Does that change your testimony about dividing that population?
I'm not, Hispanic voters should, of course, be able to vote for whomever they want. What this map does is it tells those Hispanic voters that President Trump is going to change the lines and change who your member of Congress is. What this map does is it breaks up many of those Hispanic voters, cracks them into multiple districts, draws their districts across the state, and that's wrong. I believe that those Latinos and white voters and black voters should be able to call their member of Congress about issues in their community. But a Latino voter that lives in the South Austin suburbs should not, for political purposes, in order to defend a corrupt president, all of a sudden have their district drawn out to Port Aransas. That just makes no sense. That has nothing to do with who they voted for president. They can vote for whoever they want for president, but they shouldn't have the current president screwing up their lives, changing the rules of their election because he's scared he's going to lose an election. If he's scared he's going to lose an election, then he should do popular things and win their votes.
But Hispanics make up, I think it's 30-something% of the population of Texas already. It would be impossible to draw a district that wasn't splitting Hispanic votes in some way. Isn't that just like it'd be impossible to draw one that isn't splitting up white votes in some way?
I think a 5-year-old could draw a more coherent map than what they sent you from Mar-a-Lago. It is very difficult to draw a map as convoluted as this one. Y'all know
But this
it.
one is much more, it looks much more like the octagons we were talking about earlier, the hexagons. It seems to be much more cohesive, the districts, than they were previously.
I believe the current map.
Put them up against each other.
I'll be clear. I believe the current map
Not even
is
close.
illegal and gerrymandered
Yes.
and absurd.
Correct.
And I believe strongly that Texas should have an independent commission. And I think that could prevent other states from going down this path.
Isn't that naive, independent commission? I mean, they're all appointed by someone that's got some kind of bias.
Actually, here in the city of Austin, Texas, the government does not choose who sits on that independent commission. And I think that is really the
So
proper
who
step.
chooses?
Citizens get to submit their names, and then the independent city auditor that is independent of the city of Austin actually has those citizens in place.
Okay, Chaplain Stoglin, retired Marine, sir. Along that same thread, black men are reported to have voted for the great President Trump 20% of the time, which is a huge increase from previous years of any other Republican versus Democrat presidential election. Do you see that trend continuing, or was that just a blip of some sort?
No, sir, that's absolutely continuing. I think it seems to me that people think people of color can't read, or people can't think that they have to be in a certain geographical location for them to vote, or else if they move out of that vote or if their district moves, gosh, they can't think, they can't read, they can't go to college. I was in Afghanistan for 330 days, boots on the ground.
Thank you, sir.
I was the number 2 on the enemy snipers list. I reported directly.
I think
to
in
the
here you're number 1, but go ahead.
Yeah, I reported directly to the number 2 guy in charge of the entire war. I was the command chaplain of 39 nations of the world. And I rated a full-time security team. My gear weighed 80 pounds. And because of all that intensive training, I'm a disabled vet. And my security team weighed 140 pounds per person. I was not allowed to ride an elevator for a year. I had to climb up 6 flights of steps in Afghanistan. It's 140 degrees now there. And going in a building. And I was the command chaplain. And you know what's interesting is I also was the senior military advisor to a senior general of the Afghan National Army who controlled the brain trust of the Afghan National Army. And nobody said, you were located in Afghanistan, well, I guess I'm deluded. I guess I can't have the brain power. I guess I didn't. But the general who had a PhD that I worked for, a 3-star general, he never said, you're the black chaplain. He said, you're the command chaplain of 39 nations of the world. And by the way, I've knocked on 151 doors, and it was never good news. And they were all kinds of people. And there were some people, one of your colleagues who mentioned about UTA this Monday, but he never mentioned the fact that UTA is the most friendly military university in the country.
But Maureen, to circle back, do you see the trend, the voting trends changing?
I see the voting trends changing. Representative for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, because the Republican Party was created by 150 colored men, as I said, and 20 white men. And the fact of the matter is that when you consider our history, the 13th, 14th, 15th, and the 19th Amendments were voted on by Republicans. The U.S. Department of Justice was created by Ulysses S. Grant administration. So when you look at this as a whole, we are now as a people, black people, brown people, and people talk about Hispanics, and you talk about Spanish, you talk about the Cubanos, the Dominicans, the Mexicanos, you're talking about the Castilian Spanish, so the Filipino Spanish. So when you look at all of this, that's what you're looking at. And I see the trend, particularly as black males, increasing Republicans, because when you look at what happened in the Great Society of 1960s, that they thought they were doing black people a favor, when Moynihan said, you cannot do this, you'll make the black community, or the Negro community we'll call then, a matriarchal system. You had 80% of black males who were fathers in the home. Today you have 80% who are fatherless. Who's suffering now? Look at these districts, and the black males are looking at these districts that are horrible. Schools, gangs, and you talk about daughters being snatched off the streets. What about these smugglers and these coyotes and all these people that are taking these daughters off the street? So, and nobody cares. And human smuggling is a huge issue. Black males as a whole is looking at this and all of these issues because of these issues and problems that are here today.
Thank you, sir.
Any other member of the committee have a question? Okay, Representative Hickley, you recognize the question panel.
Thank you, Chair. Quickly, because I know we want to honor the great citizens, great Texans that have come here today, but Representative Casar, I didn't want to pass up on the benefit that we have of you being here and we're discussing your district. And the reason that I wanted to talk to you was related to your comments about District 27 and the shape and the gerrymandering. But your current district is like a gerrymander's delight. Would you agree? The shape.
I think that the shapes of virtually all of the districts currently in Texas do not make good sense. And that's why I mentioned to Mr. Tepper that, frankly, whether you're progressive or conservative or libertarian, I actually find that I agree with the vast majority of Texans that we need to get politicians out of the map drawing process and have independent citizens do it, because if this is what we're calling octagons and hexagons, I think for the average voter, they say that these do not look like octagons and hexagons.
Well, I'll just speak to the way that the proposed map, it specifically with your district, where currently there's an area that Representative Pearson mentioned is half a mile wide. I mean, it dips down like it's got a tail. And now when we're looking at it, we see the lines drawn along county lines. Like, counties are made whole in that district with the exception of Bexar County. And
with a very significant exception of Bexar County intentionally.
Well, it looks visually.
visually, but I actually know those streets. And what they are intentionally doing, and I'll let you know in case they haven't shot the email, they're intentionally taking those Latino voters in southern Bexar County, drawing them in with places like Karnes City, specifically in a way that dilutes their vote, which is, again, what the Voting Rights Act was drafted to prevent. So at the end of the day, throughout our history, people have come up with every excuse they can on the surface to mask what's ultimately being done, which is to sound nice, to sound like you're doing something for the right reason, but at the end of the day, move Latino voters and move black voters
I want
where
to
you want.
specifically talk about your district. We heard a lot of testimony specifically about your district and how San Antonio was connected all the way up to Austin. And so that is fixed here in the compactness specifically of that district. And so I'm just talking compactness along the county lines and visually because of what we've been talking about here. But there's one more thing, last thing. You mentioned that the president is wildly unpopular, and I reject that. I disagree with that. The election supports that. That focusing on a person, and I'm sure we'll hear lots of testimony that focuses on Trump, is somewhat of a distraction because we're talking about policies. Voters came out specifically on the border in the Valley. We can see that they voted for secure borders. Texans that you and I both represent, they want secure elections. They want their kids to have a good education. They're not afraid to let a coach pray on a football field. And that's what we're looking at is that political performance. And obviously I support this map, and I'm hopeful that that's what we're going to get to. Thank you.
Yes, I believe the president ran on lowering prices, and our prices continue to go up. He ran on lowering people's taxes, but in fact, he is giving the biggest tax break in American history and the biggest transfer of wealth in American history from working class people to the rich. I'll leave it to you all whether you want to draw a map around a president's order, but at the end of the day, I believe that merging East Austin with West Austin into one district and then trying to say that you're creating a Latino opportunity district by merging Karnes County with southern Bexar County, I just don't think anybody here's children or grandchildren are going to be proud of that.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, hold on. Representative Wilson, you're recognized to question the panel.
My question is to Chaplain Stockman. You had something you wanted to say?
Yes, sir. I was going to say that in 2010, I had the assignment to be the task force chaplain. They call it MACTAP TAC 24, and I'll break that down. That's Marine Air Ground Task Force, 24th Infantry out of Kansas City, Missouri. We were there to train 26 Central American nations on anti-narco terrorism, including Mexico, so they wouldn't have these people snatched off the streets. And sir, it's now declassified. Hamas was there. And so we didn't know, we had to identify that. And so we were there to do anti-terrorism and because we knew that the border was going to be threatened. And that, sir, was in 2010. And so to Representative Hickland, question and all of that, that's what was growing because we don't know who's in this country. And the president is saying, we've got to get these people because you don't know. And I tell you, if people saw and I hope they don't, what I saw in Afghanistan when children and bodies were blown apart. And then the mullah said, we had a gentleman, sir, who his wife needed to go to the hospital. He borrowed 2,000 American equivalent dollars. He was unable to pay it back. So he was brought before the mullah, the religious leader, and they had a 7-year-old daughter. So the mullah said, did you borrow the money? Yes, mullah. Can you pay the dollars back? No, mullah. Then your 7-year-old daughter is going to that family, and she will belong to a 17-year-old male. And so people would say, well, why didn't America get involved? Why didn't America get involved? Because it's their country. And so if you think it doesn't happen, it does. And so my point of it is that that's what the president is trying to get this country to understand. You don't you can't measure your great American, comparatively speaking, lifestyle compared to what these people will do, have done, and will do. And I'm a witness to that. And so we had to have somebody, I had to have 10 JAGs, military lawyers, to look into it. And an anonymous American paid the $2,000. So this 7-year-old girl would not go to this family. And by the way, she would not see her family for 10 years. That's what happens in places like Afghanistan. And I had 3 interpreters whose names I will not call, they were classified, who worked for me and spoke good English. This is what the president is trying to convey to this country. And by these maps, whether you agree or disagree, I think Mr. Hunt said it in his very good presentation, in my opinion, this is what's happening. Americans still can read and write. They can choose if they want to vote for black people, white people, brown people, but at the end of the day, when I was in Afghanistan and I wore a uniform 28 years and 2 days, we didn't have, and my security team, by the way, since people are so color-struck, didn't look like me. And they took their jobs very seriously. The first day I was in Afghanistan, a sergeant first class talked to me and he said, "Sir, you Commander Stogland?" "I am." "Sir, walk to me." I did. "Sir, this is your security team. We are willing to give your lives for you. We're willing to give our lives for you." They didn't know me. We wasn't in the same neighborhood. We had to move.
Let's come back though.
miles.
Let's come back to the bill.
So anyway, I'm sorry.
No,
but anyway,
and
excuse me.
members,
I can listen to you all day.
No, members, when you question a witness, make sure that
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
You tie it back, please. Just and don't leave that on the chair to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative
Sorry.
Gordon Hawkins, you recognize the question of the panel.
I'd like to question the chaplain in the interest of time, because there's so many people waiting. This is a yes or no answer. Did you talk to the president? He told you about the mullah and what he wanted to do?
I worked for 5 presidents.
But did this one tell you?
No,
what
he didn't
wanted
tell me
okay,
what
so
to
that
do because I
answer
haven't
is
talked
no.
to the president.
The
I
oth-
haven't talked to you, ma'am.
The other question I asked is starving people in other countries. Did the president tell you that that's what he's going to stop the starving that he's doing across America?
Okay, let's bring it back just to the map, everybody. And I just want to be an admonishment to
That is the map.
all questions and witnesses that
Thanks for your question.
the question before this body is whether or not to take action on HB4. Now, anything related to that, of course, we're going to allow. But let's just try to tie it in a little bit tighter here. I think we had Representative Garcia. You're recognized the question, members of the panel.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Commander Stodden?
Commander. I was a commander.
So nice to meet you, sir. Thank you for your
Hoorah.
time and thank you for your service.
Hoorah.
Do you know how many members of the Texas House of Representatives have ever served in the military of 150?
151.
No, of 150
How many?
members
How many?
that are on the House. Do you know how many
I
have
do
ever
not.
served?
How many?
Less than a dozen.
That's 1% of us total anyway in the country.
Right.
1%,
so-
and you know this.
Yes, sir, absolutely. I am the first and only woman veteran to ever serve in this body.
What, may I ask,
And-
branch?
Air Force. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So the point of the matter is that when we're talking about redistricting and talking about, state politics and of that sort, I understand that you and I and even Colonel Wilson here have a different view of racism, racial issues, because we did grow up and came up in our whole adult lives, every day, and Tepper as well. Also served.
Right.
But what we did is we were under a culture of rules, sir,
That's correct.
where we were not permitted to disparage one another, or there is something called the UCMJ,
That's right.
which we know that will be utilized, right? So with that being said, sir, when we're talking about the politics of redistricting and doing these maps in fairness,
Yes.
unfortunately, this process does not have the same care that we were given when it comes to being colorblind and getting the mission accomplished. And I think that's where we can kind of all agree here that this is a process that, like our service in the military, is mission focused and should be colorblind. However, what we are hearing, and again, not just from us here, but from the thousands of constituents that have come to give their testimony, and you even as well, We want that fairness. We don't want there to be a racial aspect to dividing us. However, that's what we are experiencing with this particular process. So I just wanted to recognize that and just kind of, talk to that, because I know there's a lot of civilians in the room that may not understand where we're coming from, having those conversations and saying that we don't operate by color. But I think that's where kind of the disconnect is, and unfortunately we need more veterans who serve in the process in government so that we're better to understand mission first.
But they may not understand UCMJ, United States Code of Military Justice, what you're referencing, and thank you for your service. And Representative Garcia, we also took an oath against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Yes, and we are to protect all the people, right? And that is our oath. Right, Colonel? That is our oath. And we are Americans. We can disagree, and the chairman has been very lenient in the committee, but the fact of the matter is our uniforms mean something. And thank you for your services, whoever you are.
Well, certainly the chair agrees, and we're going to I appreciate everybody keeping it very civil. I know we're passionate about any particular bill that may come forward, and I appreciate everybody keeping it civil. So I think Representative Turner, or did you have another question? Chair recognizes Representative Turner to question the witnesses.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up question for Congressman Casar. Representative Hicklin asked you about the shape of your current district versus the shape of some of the districts in this new proposal that we've got before us today. But more importantly than the shape of your current district, correct me if I'm wrong, but your current district is a Voting Rights Act protected Hispanic Opportunity District, is it not?
My understanding is that's the opinion of the U.S. Supreme Court as it currently stands.
And it's gone through a couple different iterations over the course of the last redistricting, but fundamentally that district was created because the courts found that it was a violation of the law to basically subsume heavily Latino areas in South Bexar County into a district that was functionally controlled by Anglo voters.
My initial look at this map, as Representative Hicklin said, was while there are some counties that are fully contained in what is labeled 35 under this map, very conspicuously, Southern Bexar County suddenly gets carved in, and I believe that courts and lawyers and people on this dais should take the time to see if that is intentionally done.
Absolutely. And so, just to be clear for the record, the current district you represent, Congressional District 35, is currently configured as a Hispanic Opportunity District.
That is my understanding, sir.
And you are the candidate of choice of the voters in those districts. You've been elected now 2 times.
Thus far, they've elected me, but they can choose whoever
we take it one election at a time, absolutely.
Just like everybody here.
In the last 2 elections, certainly you have been that candidate. But the way Congressional District 35 is reconfigured in this proposal in House Bill 4, it may very well be that those Hispanic voters, particularly in Bexar County, the ones in Travis County aren't even in it, the ones in Bexar County may not maintain that ability to elect the candidate of their choice.
The map, of course, was only recently posted, but from my initial look, it seems that the Latino voters and communities of color and the bulk of the geography of current 35 gets merged in to create a new Congressional District 37. That district is majority people of color now, but we very well may find that voters of color do not have block voting power in that district. And then what is now labeled Congressional District 35 that has virtually no overlap with the current 35 seems to me to be something very suspicious, given that it pulls in Southern Bexar County into places like Karnes County.
And basically, your current district is cracked in this proposal.
Well, yes, and that's without mentioning Hayes County now being run out to Port Aransas and then other parts being run out west.
All right, so it's cracked at least 3 ways.
At least.
All right, thank you.
Any other member of the committee have a question for this panel? Representative Pearson, you recognize the question of the panel.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. I would be remiss, Chaplain, if I didn't thank you for being here, coming all the way from North Texas, and thank you again for your service. And I just wanted to put a little bow on your testimony when asked by my colleagues if you saw the trend of black voters moving Republican. And I just wanted to say, I'm honored to be on the front end of that trend, helping President Trump get elected from the beginning and leading his coalitions. And I just wanted you to know that out of all of the coalitions that I ran for President Trump, the Black coalition was the largest by hundreds of thousands. So thank you for being here.
You're welcome. And Madam and Mr. Chair, some of you may have not seen this, and the representatives, you know what this is. For those who don't, I was presented this stole in front of 39 nations. This is the stole that I was awarded in Afghanistan.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
Members, any other questions for the panel? Okay, we're going to go to non-members. Start, Representative Jones, you recognize the question of the panel.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This question is for Congresswoman Crockett. Aren't these gerrymandered maps a modern method of methodically mutilating minority voting power, exactly what the 15th Amendment was meant to make illegal?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know where we're getting lost in this conversation, because there's been a lot of talk about Black people or Latino people voting for Trump. People vote for whoever they want to vote for. Like, that's not what this ever was about when it came about the Voting Rights Act nor the Constitution. To be clear, when we talk about Latinos, specifically down at the border, when we talk about those Latinos, we have 3 congressional seats, basically, that sit down there. 1 is held by a Latina Republican. 2 are held by Latino men that are Democrats. And guess what? Their districts voted for them as Democrats and then also voted for Trump. So they decided to pack even more Latinos in there, hoping that maybe they can kick them out, but also to minimize their voices. And just to be clear about what we're talking about minimizing. We were always trying to make sure, and it seems like even today, as Black people specifically, we just want to be whole people as it relates to this federal government. I'm sure you know about the 3/5 compromise. But let me tell you about our voting strength in this map. In this map, African Americans basically have 1/5 of the power of an Anglo voter, because we have 4 million Black people in this state of 30 million people, right? They said, y'all get 2 opportunity seats. So Black people have 1 representative for 2 million and another representative for another 2 million, all right? But when we talk about Anglos in this state, there's only 12 million Anglos in this state. Yet somehow they have so much more voting power. And when it comes to the Latinos, and I'll pass it along, the Latino vote is only 1/3, has only 1/3 of the power of an Anglo, and Black people have 1/5 of the power of an Anglo. What we are trying to say is we want equity. I know that's a bad word nowadays, but we are all human. And last time I checked, only citizens are allowed to vote in these elections. So every citizen should have equal access to choose their representation, instead of crowding Black people to the point that all the Black people in the state only have 2 representatives, and all the Latinos in the state are crowded up to the extent that their voting power is diminished. That is why the vast majority of the people that have signed up to testify as relates to this bill are testifying against it. Now, they not gonna care, because I've been here before, but we literally have 400-something people that they are trying to testify against them. And the reason that their voices are being ignored is because even in our state maps, whether they're the state house or the state senate, our voices are not where they are supposed to be. If they were, our representatives would listen to us, and we would get legislation that was reflective of the will of the people in this state.
U.S. Supreme Court or the Fifth Circuit?
Absolutely. They have never struck them down. There's no, and they can't cite a court case that struck them down.
And along those same lines, regarding the legal precedent, Petaway v. Galveston County, which we keep hearing about, the Fifth Circuit ruled that a Black and Latino coalition district wasn't protected under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, but the United States Supreme Court did not affirmed that decision. They simply denied cert in June of 2024. So isn't it true that a denial of cert is not an endorsement of the Fifth Circuit's reasoning? They just refused to review the case, since we both lawyers.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's all that it means.
I want to make sure of that as well. Also, Congresswoman Crockett, you heard Chair Vasud admit on the record at the beginning when he was explaining the process that he's not informed about this 350-page bill, that he hadn't had time to fully read or understand it. So if even the chair isn't informed, how can everyday Texans with no legal training nor staff and only 48 hours to respond be expected to give meaningful and informed testimony on something as complicated as this in this hearing today?
That's $1 million question, but I assure you that this seems like it is part of the design and not a defect.
And my final question to you, Congresswoman. You attended the University of Houston Law Center, correct?
Yes, we're both Cougs.
We both go Cougs. So you're familiar with Congressional District 18.
I am.
You served alongside both Congresswoman Jackson Lee and former Congressman Sylvester Turner.
Yes.
Who happens to be from Acres Homes.
Yes.
Given that history, can you speak to the significance of stripping CD 18 of Acres Homes in Independence Heights, which, by the way, are both historic, in CD 18 and Intercontinental Airport, and moving them into CD 29? What message does this send to the 18th Congressional District?
Yeah, it is so unfortunate. The 18th has such a legacy, going all the way back to the incomparable Barbara Jordan, who also served on the state level as a state senator. And as we know, Barbara Jordan actually ran for the state house multiple times and was unable to be elected. And it was not until that fateful election, after we had opportunity seats created in the state of Texas, that in the state house, my late great predecessor, Eddie Bernice Johnson, was able to be sworn in 1972. That is also when the dean, who sits up here, the first 2 black women that were ever elected to the state house, at the same time, Barbara Jordan was able to win and serve in the state Senate because there had been a change in the law. And there was a recognition of the fact that minority voices have been diluted. Now just think about the fact that the dean, one of the first black women, the first 2 black women to ever swear into this body, is still serving today and serving honorably over 50 years later. But unfortunately, 50 years later, things don't seem to be looking up or looking better. They are trying to make sure that there are less Miss T's coming along than more. That is why we are here, because we know that there would not be a Miss T or a Eddie Bernice Johnson but for laws that made them do what was right, which means that certain communities had an opportunity to elect their representation. I don't know why we are pretending. I honestly would rather people just tell us what it is. We don't care about black and brown. Just say it. Like, let's just be real about it. Because that's what they're going to do when you say black folk. You have 4 million of y'all here, but you only get 2 seats amongst the 4 million. While 12 million Anglos end up with all these seats, 20-something seats. So, taking an economic engine out like IAH, one of the largest airports, not only in this state, but one of the larger ones in this country, that deprives this community, that a lot of these historic communities need a little bit of economic kind of tie-in to help them thrive. When you start to talk about Acres Homes, listen, Acres Homes, and when you talk about the late, great Sylvester Turner, when I tell you he was so proud to be from Acres Homes that he never left. He made sure he was always going to stay there because he never wanted the people to believe that Acres Home ever left him. He could be the mayor of the city of Houston or be the congressman from Houston, but at the end of the day, he was born and bred in Acres Home, and he wanted those children to recognize that it's not where you come from that will determine where you are going. And so he stayed there, but this is a historic black community. So again, they took one of my freedmen's towns away. There are certain things that I had to fight for that freedmen's town to even have their designation, and I had to fight for certain things from coming in there. When you throw them into another district that does not know their struggle or does not care about their struggle, then they won't have a representative, no matter who that representative looks like, that will protect their interests. That is what common interest looks like. And so taking those things out of the 18th, in my opinion, is downright evil. And it is wrong, and we will see what the courts ultimately have to say about it, because I don't think that we will engage in real legislation in this body. Real legislation looks like real debate where parties listen. Real legislation looks like actually taking up amendments. Real legislation looks like taking into account what these members who have traveled from all over the state have to say, and hearing them and taking that into account, and making sure that the legislation doesn't come from some random person whose name we cannot name right now, but a random law firm who none of us hired, and then saying that this is what y'all gonna get, instead of listening to the very people that put everybody that's sitting here into these seats.
And along those lines, this is what I say. People, let's just say the Republicans on the ones who've spoken are scrounging their faces up or chagrined because we keep using the word racism, right? Yeah. First of all, where I come from in the 18th Congressional District, you call a spade, right? And everybody keeps saying, why are you talking about racism? And why are you pulling a race card for the most part, which is what they try to do to get us to back off of speaking truth to power and telling the truth. I'm going to pull that race card from the bottom of the deck, the middle of the deck, the top of the deck, as long as they keep doing racist stuff, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't want me to call a race card when you're being racist, then stop being racist.
Yeah.
And all I'm going to say is this. The way that they have cracked and packed our districts, and again, when you talk to Congressman Casar, when you talk to Congresswoman Garcia, when we talk to you, when we listen to Congressman Vesey, and we listen to Congressman Al Green, in the urban districts, which is where most black and brown people are, by concentration, that is where they literally took away or designed 3 seats taken that are voted by either black people or brown people. And they figured out a way to surgically, like precisely, crack us and pack us so that white folks would get more seats.
Yeah.
And you can sit up here and you can tell me that's not true, and we were just trying to get 5 Republican districts. That's like telling me it's raining when you peeing on me. We just not that stupid.
Yeah.
But thank you for your testimony. I appreciate you for coming.
No, and I think the last part of what you said is so important, because we continue to hear how well Trump was performing with blacks and Latinos. Then why is it that we getting less black and Latino seats? Give them to us, because we have the population. Give us the seats. If they vote for Trump, then God bless them. I mean, that's all I can say. God bless them who they vote for, but they get to vote for who they want to vote for. So give us the seats. Like, I mean, Katrina and I, Rep Pearson and I, we have talked about this before. Like, if we have a map that is reflective of the beautiful diversity of this state, then I am happy. You don't have to worry about me talking noise to you. And ultimately, again, as we have, Latinos are voting for Republicans in at least 2 seats in the current map. I don't care who you vote for, but give it to the people, because they are the ones that get us the seats in the first place. It is our bodies that they keep using, and then they want to diminish our voices. Stop it. That is all I'm asking for. Stop it.
I appreciate you all.
Chair recognizes Representative Raymond to question the members of the panel.
Testing, mic check. Could you remind me of the chaplain's name? Because I really just want to ask the chaplain some questions.
Yes,
but I didn't get his name.
I have him registered as Chaplain Stoglin.
Chaplain Stoglin, yes.
What? What?
Stoglin.
Stoglin.
Yes, sir.
Stoglin.
German, they tell me.
Stoglin. Before I ask him, and I want to ask him because you're not a politician, and so I feel like we can get some really straight answers. That's a joke, kind of. But Chairman, I do want to correct for the record, Chairman.
Gentleman's only recognized the question of the panel.
But no, it's not a question of you. It's
Okay.
just to correct the record. that, I'm sorry she's not here, but Representative Hicklin said that she felt that Trump was wildly popular, even though some didn't agree. And I just want to, for the record, stipulate that wildly popular is now defined by 39% approval, according to Fox News. 39% approval in the country. Wildly popular, that's what that means. The other thing, though, I do want to mention, because I'm Hispanic and I have the most Hispanic state rep seat in the country. We have a gentleman here who ran for the United States Senate, Colin Allred, who carried the Rio Grande Valley, which is largely Hispanic, carried my district, which is obviously very Hispanic, overwhelmingly carried it, and carried the Hispanic community against an Hispanic incumbent United States senator. Trump did not win the Hispanic vote in Texas. That's fake news. Anyway, let me ask the chaplain a couple of questions. Chaplain, you said you support House Bill 4, is that right?
Yes.
And,
Yes,
and
sir,
you,
I do.
And you support it because, just remind me, because I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I'm an American and I choose to like it.
No, I know, but you like it because...
I think it gives better representation to what is being done in these districts.
I thought you had said, and if I'm not right, then correct me. I thought you'd said you liked that this would create more Republican members.
Leadership.
Is that right?
Yes.
So there would be more Republicans. In your
Leadership.
view, more Republicans elected to Congress if this map is approved. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that makes you happy, right?
Yes, it does.
So you're glad that they're doing this map because it's guaranteeing more Republican congressmen get elected. Is that right?
It's guaranteed that people of America can choose to do that. If
Well, no, only people in Texas. Only people in Texas.
No, that's what I'm talking about, the great state
All
of
right.
Texas.
Well, you said American, but people in
Well,
Texas.
we are Americans in
no,
Texas.
but you said
are we
people in Americans could. But
Americans
it's
in
only
Texas.
Texans, American
Texans.
Texans who are Americans.
The great
Americans
state of
who are
Texas.
All right. And so,
members.
So I just want to clarify.
Hold yield for a second. The court reporter waved at me in panic.
Just like
so
exactly.
I want to make sure that we all understand. I think it was an American Texan, American Texan. Now she's panicking at me.
The great state of Texas.
All
I'm
right.
talking about citizens of the great state of
Let's
Texas.
just make sure that we slowly don't talk over each other because the court reporter. It might catch on fire over there. So with that, Representative Raymond just recognize your question to witness.
Thank you, Chairman. Chaplain Stoglin supports this bill because it would create more districts that would be represented by Republicans in the United States Congress. Did you get that? Okay, good. And so let me ask you, do you think, Chaplain, I know you're listening to a lot of legal stuff up here, but let me ask you, do you believe that race should be considered when we draw up these districts or not?
Let me answer in two parts. Race is always considered because people talk about race, and that's who we are. Secondly, when we continue to talk about we want in this state specifically, to your point, that we want people to represent us, then that doesn't mean that because we are black people, brown people, that we can only think because we're in a black community or we're in a brown community. People choose what they want.
So again,
and I've been in those situations in other states, including Mississippi, staying across the street from the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan of Itala County. So been there, done that. It's still what people choose to do. We are Texans. We can choose to vote for black people, brown people, white people, Asian people.
That's not my
but
question.
The question is, are they going to represent that district?
That's not my question. You're starting to sound like a politician now.
No, sir, I'm sounding like I am.
No, I'm asking you. I asked you very directly, Chaplain, do you believe that race should be considered when they're drawing up these congressional districts?
No.
They should not.
No. Because you can't have it both ways. You say one hand you don't want to be protected.
That's right.
Then you want to be protected.
You can't have it both ways. You want more Republican seats guaranteed. That's what you testified to. And the only way you do that is by considering race. And you know how? You put more Anglos into those districts.
So
that's how
what I'm
you
saying.
do it.
I hear you questioning, but basically you're leading a question
No,
here
it's not a
by
lead.
saying
That's a
that
fact.
all Republicans are going to be Anglo.
No.
That's an assumption.
No, I'm just telling you, when you look at this, the only way you can take districts represented by the 3 members who are sitting next to you and guaranteeing that they'll then be Republicans, which is what you want, the only way you do it is by considering race and that you take more Anglos and put them in there.
Maybe
and by
not.
the way, no, that's what you do.
No,
So
maybe they won't. No,
you
sir.
just said
maybe they won't be Anglo.
You just said you can look at the maps. They are.
We
they
shall
are.
see.
For the record, they
What
are.
did they just say? You got to wait for the election time, right?
No, look
Okay.
at the map. There are more, all these districts that are being created. The
My,
only
my
way-
position is my position.
I know, and your position is that race should be considered. And to get to the race that you want is to put more white people in these
No,
districts.
sir, you don't put words in my mouth. That's not what
That's
I
what you said.
No, sir.
That's what you said.
You are
But let
in
me say
error.
this. You said
You
that
are
you
in
think,
error.
you think that black men, that some people think black men can't think for them. What'd you say?
Yeah, because as if you're only in a black district, you can only think for black people. If you're in a brown district, based on what's been attested to.
Do you think that the 80% of black men in Texas that voted for Democrats can think for themselves?
They can think for themselves. They can
So
choose
80%
for
of
themselves.
the black men in Texas can think for themselves, right?
I believe they can. I think 100% of them can.
But the other 20%?
I said 100. You said 80. I said 100.
Well, because you said something about the 20% that vote Republican can think for themselves. Well, what
I
about-
didn't say that, sir.
What'd you say?
I said that it's as if what's been inferred and indicated and talked elongated about, as if color, and as if nobody's going to vote for black people if they are out of these districts, or they're not going to vote for Hispanic if they're out of these districts, whatever these current designated districts are. That's not true.
Well, what I know is that by your own testimony, 80% of the black men that voted for Democrats, I guess they do know how to use their brain, right?
I never doubted it.
Okay, so 80% of black men in this state believe that Democrats should be representing them in the United States Congress. So they're pretty smart, right?
That's their choice.
That's their choice. They're pretty smart, right?
I didn't say that.
They're pretty dumb?
I didn't say that either.
Can they think for themselves?
I hope they can.
Can they? Can they think for themselves?
I have no idea.
Last question, can they think for themselves? The 80% that vote for Democrat, can they? Yes, it is, Chairman. Yes, it is.
I think that people
Can
those
they think
people
for
who
themselves?
Vote if they vote their choice. End of story.
So they can think for themselves, right? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Stoglin, I had called you to testify as Chaplain Stoglin, but I looked at your registration. Your first name was listed as Chaplain. Is that your first name?
No.
Okay, what's your first name?
Rich, R-I-C-H.
Rich,
I'm sorry.
R-I-C-H?
Yes.
Do I have your permission to change your your
Yes,
registration?
you do.
First name of Rich, last name Stoglin?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll make that correction right now.
Good to go.
All right. With that, members of the panel, thank you for your testimony. This panel is excused.
Mr. Chairman, if you'll indulge me, I do have a letter that was given to me after my testimony from the Congressional Hispanic Caucus of the United States Congress. Could I submit that for the record? Or do I
Please,
need
please
to-
hand that to the clerk. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Members, we're going to now take a little break. The House Select Committee on Congressional Redistricting will stand at ease for 5 minutes.